Can't handle the pressure. Where's Anna? Where's our fearless leader? Jerry, you've been on this committee for a while. I'll defer to you. Yeah, I'll defer to Jerry. As close to the chair as possible.
Subcommittee will come to order. The chair recognizes himself for an opening statement. We're here today to mark up the FCC Consolidated Reporting Act, a bill that's passed this committee in the House twice in the last two Congresses. The bill consolidates 8 discrete reports into one thorough and holistic review of the communications marketplace with the aim of giving a more accurate view of the advancements and challenges in the fast-moving and innovative communications technology sector. It also reduces the burden on the FCC by eliminating outdated and unnecessary reports, and as with so many other products of this subcommittee in the past, this legislation takes into account changes recommended by the minority. Our subcommittee will continue to do our work, large and small, in as thoughtful and bipartisan manner as possible. When we work together, we produce good work for the country. The most recent example of the outcome of our efforts is the successful AWS-3 auction, which produced proceeds of nearly $45 billion, fully paying for the public safety interoperable broadband network, enhanced 9/11 services, and will likely provide $20 billion toward paying down our nation's massive debt. And it will create thousands of new, good-paying jobs as new technology is invented and new devices are created. Recently, Chairman Wheeler and I applauded the various federal partners who, with regular interaction from our committee, came together to make this happen. Regrettably, Tom and I forgot to also commend the broadcast community for their part in making that auction successful. We appreciate the role broadcasters played, and we look forward to the positive role I know they can play in making the next auction an even bigger success. With that being said, let me address the elephant in the room, net neutrality. I'd like to again invite my Democratic colleagues to work with me, with Chairman Upton, and with the committee majority to produce a durable net neutrality bill that will avoid the protracted litigation that's sure to follow Chairman Wheeler's heavy-handed regulatory takeover of the Internet. Strangely, the American people have no way of knowing precisely what the FCC will vote on, and neither do any of you or me until the Commission takes their final vote. And perhaps not even then. The FCC took 10 months to release the text last time it voted on net neutrality. Last month, Chairman Upton, Chairman Thune, and I called on Chairman Wheeler to make available the draft order prior to the vote so that Congress, industry, and most importantly, the some 4 million Americans who are interested public commenters could know exactly what the Commission intended to do. The Chairman rejected our request for transparency, wrapping himself in old-school Washington regulatory mumbo-jumbo. This is not how it should be done. And in many states, public utility commissions operate far more in the open and when they conduct the people's business. This is yet another example of how broken things are in Washington. Why keep the draft order secret? If Chairman Wheeler is willing to brief members of Congress, our staffs, the White House, and who knows who else on the key points, why not just share the language he's written to accomplish his goals? What's there to hide? We posted our draft language for all to see, and the feedback we got is most helpful. Folks, we're talking about the future of the Internet here. Likely just 3 commissioners at the FCC are about to decide the Internet's future behind closed doors for no one else to see until long after the decisions are made. And that's no way to conduct the public's business. With that, I recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Pallone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, I guess. Let me say, just with regard to the net neutrality issue, which is not the focus of what we're doing today, briefly, that I am pleased with what Chairman Wheeler has proposed. But I also agree that it would be good if we could adopt legislation on a bipartisan basis. And so hopefully that's still something that we can try to achieve while the FCC moves ahead with its new regulations. But back to the issue at hand, the communications market is one of the most vibrant sectors of the economy. Technology evolves at such a fast clip that 2 years, which amounts to one congressional term, is more like a lifetime when it comes to high innovation marketplaces. In fact, since the first iteration of the FCC Consolidated Reporting Act bill, the bill before us today, was first introduced in November 2011, 5 new iPhone models have been released, and that's a lot of change. The FCC has the primary responsibility for overseeing this fast-paced market. As part of this charge, Congress has tasked the FCC with compiling reports to make information about these changing markets available to the public. Consumers and business rely on this data, as do the FCC and Congress. These reports detail the state of play for far-flung aspects of the market, from video programming to the state of wireless competition to barriers for entry for small businesses and more. And no doubt some of these reports are outdated, others overlap. We have a bipartisan interest in rationalizing these requirements and allowing the agency to use its limited resources more efficiently. I'm pleased that my Republican colleagues have worked with Democrats to ensure that in this effort to promote efficiency, we don't inadvertently eliminate transparency for consumers about their cable bills. And I appreciate that we've come to agreement on bill text that does not alter the FCC's authority over broadband under Section 706. And finally, I'd like to thank my colleague, Ranking Member Eshoo, for her continued leadership on these issues. Look forward to continuing this conversation with our Republican and Democratic colleagues in the Senate, because we all share an interest in good data collection and rational reporting obligations at the FCC. I yield back, unless I don't think any of my colleagues want to share in this, so I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of time. Chair recognizes the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Upton of Michigan, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, one of the committee's longstanding priorities is, in fact, to modernize government for the innovation era, to encourage greater efficiency and accountability, and this can make a real difference, we know, in people's lives, especially in the communications and technology sector, where the U.S. is a global leader in innovation, connectivity, and economic growth. The FCC Consolidating Reporting Act embodies the kind of smart reforms that reduce duplication in the federal government while producing better results. This bill consolidates 8 separate congressionally mandated reports on the communication industry into a single comprehensive report. The streamlined report will give us important information about competition among technology platforms and the deployment of communication technologies to unserved communities. It also helps us eliminate regulatory barriers and empower small businesses. Not a bad thing. Finally, the bill ensures that legacy regulations and reports are not hampering investment in innovation, and that industry and consumers have a full, realistic picture of the state of the communications marketplace. The FCC Consolidated Reporting Act has earned broad bipartisan support, as we've heard this morning, and was overwhelmingly approved by each of the last 2 Congresses. Without a single vote against this bill in the past, it is my hope that the third time is the charm. We'll see it signed into law by the President as soon as possible. Let's get it done. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Chair recognizes the gentlelady from California, the ranking member of the subcommittee, Ms. Eshoo. Good morning.
Good morning,
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Today's markup revisits a bill that returning members of this subcommittee know very well. The last Congress unanimously passed the FCC Consolidated Reporting Act by a vote of 415 to 0. The premise of the bill is simple: to streamline congressionally mandated reporting requirements under a single industry-wide report. I've consistently supported this bill because it frees the FCC to focus on its ultimate mission to protect the public interest and promote competition. These reports and the data collected serve a critical role in supporting the FCC's decision-making and our work as policymakers. Take, for example, the FCC's report on cable industry prices, which last year found the rate for expanded basic cable had tripled since 1995. Similarly, the Commission's latest broadband progress report found that 55 million Americans lack access to advanced broadband. That's really rather breathtaking. Nearly 20% of the country. Far worse are the results on tribal lands, where nearly two-thirds of residents lack access to today's broadband speeds. So the bill under discussion today ensures that this data will continue to be collected under a single report. We need the data. It really is a foundation for our policy debates, discussions, and ultimately the policies that we put in place. The manager's amendment I will offer with Representative Scalise provides two important clarifications. First, our effort to consolidate reporting requirements, including the FCC 706 report, does not in any way impact or alter the explicit grant of broadband authority that the court affirmed in the Verizon case last year. Second, the amendment preserves the FCC's obligation to examine how retransmission consent fees impact a consumer's monthly bill. A product of the recent reauthorization of Stella, the collection of aggregate data will bring about much-needed transparency as retrans fees reach an estimated $5.1 billion this year. There's another, oh my God. I thank the chairman and his staff for working with me to address these important concerns, and with the adoption of the manager's amendment, I support and urge my colleagues to pass the FCC Consolidated Reporting Act of 2015. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. The chair reminds members that pursuant to the committee rules, all members' opening statements will be made part of the record. I now recognize the vice chair of the committee, the gentlewoman from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn, for 1 minute for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that we are here today. This is a common sense piece of legislation. It has passed before. It consolidates several reports into a single communications marketplace report that will assess various factors, including the state of competition in the communications marketplace and the regulatory barriers. We all know competition is the key driver to a robust and dynamic free marketplace. So looking for increased efficiencies by cutting government red tape, that's the right kind of step. It is the way we should move forward. I appreciate that we are pushing this forward, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. Anyone on the Democratic side seeking recognition for a 1 minute opening statement? If not, I now recognize the gentleman from Ohio, the vice chair of the subcommittee, Mr. Latta, for 1 minute.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding the markup today. The telecommunications industry is constantly changing and represents a robust sector of our economy. Therefore, it is important that the Commission, who oversees our nation's telecommunications, keep up with the industry's rapid growth by taking steps to increase efficiency and productivity. The FCC Consolidated Reporting Act would initiate much-needed bookkeeping reforms at the FCC by modernizing existing law to reduce the agency's reporting workload. By consolidating numerous reports required by law into a single comprehensive report on the state of the communications marketplace, the FCC will be relieved of unnecessary labor and be able to better utilize their time more effectively. This legislation improves operational practices in the federal government, an idea all members should be able to support. I urge my colleagues to support the legislation, and I thank the chairman, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Anyone else seeking time? Recognize the gentleman from Louisiana, the whip of the House. The gentleman with the amendment, Mr. Scalise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you bringing this bill back again. This is going to mark the third time in 4 years that we've brought this, and I think, as you said, the third time should be the charm. I want to especially thank Ms. Eshu for working with us to make this a continued bipartisan bill. We've talked about not only the underlying text, but as we did some reforms in the Stella bill, we wanted to make sure that that those didn't get dropped out, and so we worked closely on this amendment that will come forward shortly. But it does show that we can work together to get some good things done to streamline the FCC. We ultimately will get this back on the House floor, and I hope we get a continued unanimous vote in the House, and also finally get the Senate to take it up and let this become law. We do not need a report on the telegraph anymore. I think we all recognize how technology is advanced. It's time that we advance our laws to let the FCC be more efficient and improve the marketplace Let's look forward to the debate, the manager's amendment, and yield back the balance of my time.
Anyone else seeking time for an opening statement? If not, the chair now calls up the discussion draft and asks the clerk to report.
Discussion draft to amend the Communications Act of 1934 to consolidate the reporting obligations of the Federal Communications Commission in order to improve congressional oversight and reduce reporting burdens.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and the bill will be open for amendment at any point. So ordered. Are there bipartisan amendments to the bill? Recognize the gentleman from Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a bipartisan amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to the discussion draft offered by Mr. Scalise of Louisiana and Ms. Eshoo of California.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes in support of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to offer this bipartisan manager's amendment with Ranking Member Eshoo. The discussion draft we're marking up is identical to the bill that the House unanimously passed in 2013. I expect the changes that we make with this amendment to produce a similar outcome. As we know, Congress passed important reforms in the video marketplace in the Stella Reauthorization Act last December, including a requirement for the FCC to provide more transparency on how retransmission consent costs affect cable rates. The changes to the cable rates report, which we would consolidate into the market report with this legislation, were enacted just 3 months ago as part of the Stella Reauth. We do not want to eliminate these changes, so the first part of the amendment maintains that change in the new consolidated report. The second part of the amendment deals with Section 706 of the Telecommunications Act. The draft bill would consolidate the 706 report, and so our amendment restates that the language of Section 706 of the Act with an updated reference to the new report created in the draft bill. While I don't agree with the D.C. Circuit Court that Section 706 is a grant of authority to the FCC to do whatever it wants, this isn't a bill on the FCC authority. In fact, the bill explicitly states that in Section 4. It's about consolidating reports and modernizing the Commission. The language of this bill, as amended, is not an endorsement of FCC authority, rather an honest attempt to shield this bill from that debate. There will definitely be plenty of time for that debate on the meaning of 706 in the future, but today's not that day, and this isn't that bill. The manager's amendment before us was drafted in a bipartisan way to address these two concerns. I'm pleased that we could come to agreement on that, and I want to thank Chairman Walden and especially Ranking Member Eshoo for working on this amendment and reaching this bipartisan consensus. I urge all of my colleagues to support this amendment, to vote for the bill in subcommittee, in the full committee, and ultimately to get another strong unanimous support vote in the House, and ultimately to get this finally across the finish line in the Senate. So look forward to the debate on the amendment and its adoption, and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Are there others seeking time to speak on the manager's amendment? Chair recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Eshoo.
I concur, and I urge everyone to support the amendment. Thank you.
And the gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. Others seeking recognition to speak on the amendment? If there's no further discussion, the vote occurs on the amendment. All those in favor shall signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The nays, who wrote this? The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Clever, clever. Years of ripping reading AP copy helped there. Do you have the next sheet? Thank you. The question now occurs on forwarding the discussion draft to the full committee as amended. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. And in this case, the ayes again have it, and the bill is agreed to. The discussion draft is agreed to. Now, without objection, staff's authorized to make technical and conforming changes to the legislation approved by the subcommittee today. So ordered, and without objection, this subcommittee, having done its work admirably, stands adjourned.